Hi, welcome back to Echoes from the Satellite. I'm your host, Karen. Today, I want to talk about somebody who I feel doesn't get a lot of recognition anymore, and that's Andre Norton. So, Andre Norton was a science fiction writer that I think if you were reading science fiction and fantasy as well, in the 60s and 70s, you probably recognize that name. If you started later than that, I don't know, maybe you don't recognize Andre Norton. I haven't seen a lot of people on YouTube talking about Andre Norton, and it really surprises me because when I was, a youth reading science fiction back in the 70s and 80s, I felt like her books were kind of everywhere. And I know she was one of the earliest science fiction and fantasy writers that I read. So I thought I would just do an episode today about Andre Norton, and I went back and read one of the earliest books of hers that I read, and that's what we're going to do today. So you might be wondering, who was Andre Norton? Well, Andre Norton was born Alice Mary Norton back in 1912 in Cleveland, Ohio. She was born to a family that liked to read, were big readers. She commented in interviews that they would go to the library every week and check out books. So that's how she became, uh, a big book lover. And then she, started writing. And her first book was published in 1934. It was called The Prince Commands. And when she first started writing, she wasn't actually writing science fiction or fantasy. She initially delved in other genres like Western or historical drama, but she did change her name legally in 1934 to Andre Alice Norton because what she was doing was writing adventure stories for boys. And so it was felt that she needed to have a male sounding name in order to break into that marketplace, basically. So that's how that came about. She did work as a librarian for many years through the 1930s and into the 40s. She owned a bookstore briefly in 1940 and 1941, but unfortunately, uh, that kind of went under, and so that business ended. Around the same time, she was also working as a special librarian for the Library of Congress, working on special projects for them. But that position also ended when World War II started. So then she went to work for Martin Greenberg at Gnome Press, and Gnome Press was publishing science fiction. And she worked for him for many years, I think 8 years total, until at that point she decided to throw herself completely into writing. She felt confident that she could, move into that space and support herself. And that's what she did. And Andre Norton wrote or co-wrote over 300 books in her life. So that when I say, she was well known and prolific, she had a large number of works to her name. And she wrote a number of series. So if you hear about Andre Norton, you'll hear things like the Witchworld series or the Forerunner series. So she had, these worlds that she would develop over many years in her works. And she was really well recognized by her contemporaries. She won a number of awards. She was named a Grandmaster of Science Fiction by the Science Fiction Writers Association. She was named a Gandalf Grandmaster of Fantasy, say that 3 times fast. She was voted into the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Hall of Fame. And so, she was a well-respected writer in her time. She passed away in 2005 of heart failure, which was brought on due to pneumonia. And after her passing, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association created the Andre Norton Award for outstanding work in young adult literature. And she really did produce a lot of young adult, back then they called it juveniles, but what we consider to be young adult works. Although I think I don't think she ever really considered that she was doing anything less creative or less inspired. In one of the interviews I read, she said that the main thing about doing juveniles is that you might do certainly no sexual situations and perhaps less violent. Another interview, she said she abhorred four-letter words, so she didn't use them in her writing. But yeah, she was a very well-known author in her time. So a bit puzzling to me why she's not talked about more. If I had to characterize her work or talk about some of her key themes, I think the thing that stands out to me is that she wrote adventure. She really enjoyed or seemed to enjoy, because most of her books seem to feature adventure stories. And maybe that is a key reason why she's not as talked about now, because she didn't have a lot of, navel gazing, contemplative novels. She had a lot of adventure stories. People had to take care of something. They had to get from point A to point B and do this and that. And the characters, at least in the books I remember reading, were not sitting around, thinking about things, or you didn't have a lot of philosophical discussions going on, at least, again, to my reading. So I feel like she's characterized by her adventure stories. She also frequently had a lot of what you might think of as occult or perhaps extrasensory capabilities with her characters. So, they could be telepathic. They could be capable of controlling other people's minds or having powers like that. And frequently, the protagonist would have maybe an animal companion. She was very fond of animals, especially cats. And sometimes they could communicate mentally with these companions. So you see that a lot. And this reminds me, I didn't know this until I started looking things up for this episode, but the movie Beastmaster, and if you're of a certain age, you probably saw Beastmaster a million times on HBO, because HBO seemed to show that. I don't know if it was the only movie they had when they first started, but it seemed like it was on every day over and over again. But anyway, Beastmaster with Mark Singer was very, very loosely based on an Andre Norton book called Beastmaster. I never read that book. I looked up a synopsis of the book. About the only thing that they had in common was the main character had these animal companions. So anyway, fun fact. Yes, I hope she got paid a lot for that. But that in a nutshell is what I know about Andre Norton. I would recommend you go out and read or watch some videos and learn some more about her. I think she's to be commended for doing what she did at a time when women probably didn't write that many books. I've read a lot about Ursula K. Le Guin and Joanna Russ and James Tiptree. And, being a woman in science fiction back in the 50s, 60s, even 70s was not an easy thing. So I'm just, really impressed with the fact that she was able to go out and write as many books as she did. And so with that said, I'll get to my look at The Time Traders, which is a book of hers that I've read many times as a youth, and then I just reread here recently. So this is my, sorry, voice is a little rough today. I've been feeling a little under the weather. This is my original copy of The Time Traders. And this is from 1958. It's an Ace book. It's pretty beat up, you can see. I'll put another image up for you guys to look at. And yeah, it's one of these sort of smallish books. Kind of interesting to read these substandard size books. I love the cover. It kind of gives away some stuff with this alien looking dude up here in the corner. Now, the funny thing is, I thought I had the sequel to this, which is The Galactic Derelict. I don't. I have another version of The Time Traders. So this one, I think, is from the mid 70s. It doesn't say inside. I looked around, there's no date inside, but this Ace edition looks very much like a mid 70s version. So anyway, with that said, what can I tell you about the Time Traders? Well, the Time Traders was another series by Andre Norton. Originally 4 books in this series, and then I think they added another 3 like a decade or 2 later. And so this initial book of the Time Traders starts with a young man named Ross Murdoch, who back then is described as a juvenile delinquent. I don't know if we'd use that term nowadays, but definitely a young man who is getting in trouble with the law quite a lot. And so he's in court, and the judge offers him the option of either undergoing this new rehabilitation process or going with these military men and joining up with them for a special project. So he thinks, well, I'll go with those guys, but I'll be looking for a way to escape. I'll try to, he's thinking he's going to be on a military base and they'll be doing, training or something, and he'll just like run out under the wire and escape. What he doesn't know is those guys are there to take him away to this special project where they're going to train him to become a time agent. So he's going to travel through time. And he starts, for a while, he doesn't know what they're training him for. He's up in this like Arctic base, and they're teaching him these ancient languages and, toughening him up. And he's like, what in the heck are they doing? And then finally, they reveal that they're traveling through time. And it's like, for what? So this was set during the Cold War. So of course the antagonists are Soviet agents, and both the US and the Soviets are trying to go back in time and uncover this technology. And, if you saw the alien on the cover, you can guess whose technology they're trying to find. So, yeah, this is a great adventure story. It's really interesting in some of the things that maybe she sets forth in the story, in that it's sort of implied that this work maybe requires men who are, I don't want to say uncivilized, but men who are willing to do things that like normal men maybe aren't. So like a criminal, somebody whose morals are maybe a little loose, maybe works better as a time agent in some ways. Yeah, it's an interesting story, and that's never really explored, the idea that, well, Ross is kind of violent and rough and doesn't necessarily have compunctions against maybe killing somebody, and some of the other guys too, because he's not the only agent that they've brought in who's been in trouble with the law. So, although not all of them are. So there's a thought that they will do better in these societies, being that those societies are pre-civilized anyway. It's an interesting thought, but it's not really explored. So I'm not going to say that that's a theme in the book. But I do think that there is a sub-theme that this gives Ross a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, and that they're able to harness some of his rough edges that way. And I don't know if that was something you'd want to get across to a 12 or 13-year-old boy back then, but hey. Um, anyway, it's a really fun book. It's interesting how she also weaves in some history. Andre Norton was definitely a fan of history, and she meticulously researched her books. She talked about how she would sometimes read, 20 or 30 books, which sounds um, just insane for a young adult work, not criticizing young adult, but or any work really. But she did a lot of research. She wrote a lot of notebooks, and you can see that in the story where she makes a lot of points about the different cultures that they encounter. So when they go back in time, they present themselves as members of the Beaker Society of Merchants, and so they're in Great Britain and or Britannia, however you want to look at it, and they have to understand the other cultures around them. So, she talks about that, and it's obvious that she's researched this and understands who was there at the time, who the different groups were, how they interacted. So, that is interesting in and of itself. And I found myself, I pull out my phone and kind of Google certain things to like, oh, who are these people? Who are the axe people? Who? So, yeah, very, if you're into that kind of thing, it's also intriguing to try to understand the cultures that were around at that time. So I would say, hey, it's a great adventure book if you're up for something like that, where you're not only getting some time travel, you're getting some aliens and all kinds of stuff. And also, she brings in the ESP powers. We don't say ESP anymore, do we? She brings in the psi powers, telepathy. Hey, it's all there. It's all a lot of fun. So I would highly recommend it. Go out and get yourself a copy of the Time Traders. You'll have fun. It's a pretty quick read. And yeah, I will move on to The Galactic Derelict at some point. It won't be my next read. I don't have it on hand. I will have to go pick it up or order it from somebody, but I will get it. One of the other issues I have right now is I have a number of books by Andre Norton that are unfortunately all sequels. They're all like in the middle of some of her other series. Like I have Forerunner, but when I look up the Forerunner series, that's actually like in the middle of the Forerunner series. And I think I have one of the books in the Witchworld series. I think it's Three Against the Witchworld, but that's like, again, somewhere in the middle. So you all could help me if any of you out there know about the Witchworld series or the Forerunner series. Do I have to start with the first book in this series, or can I jump in the middle? I would love to know. So if you have any thoughts about that, please leave it in the comments because, I can't really tell from reading some of these sequences that people have whether I need to start at the beginning or I can start in the middle. So I'd love to hear your thoughts out there. Um, as far as what I think I'll be reading in the next few weeks, I got a couple of books that I'm looking at. Um, I've had these two books here, Wizards and Cosmic Knights in Isaac Asimov's Magical Worlds of Fantasy series. I'm missing the middle one. The middle one is Witches. I'm thinking about starting the Wizards book and reading it. It's got a lot of nice stories, and I know I've shown this one before. So this one may be in the reading queue here very quickly, but there's another book I really think I need to read, and I'm so ashamed. God, I can't even believe I'm admitting this. I have never read 1984. Okay, before you throw things at me, I know a lot of folks got to read this. This was like a high school assignment for a lot of people. My high school sucked. They made us read Silas Marner, which is like the most boring book ever. So yeah, and then in the intervening years, I don't know why. I never got around to it. I think I need to read this now. So this may be the next thing that I'm reading. Um, yeah, I know. I really should have read it, but I'm going to read it. So, and this also reminds me. So this is a beautiful SF Masterworks book. I love the Masterworks. I've been trying to get more Masterworks. Um, there are no SF Masterworks editions of Andre Norton's work. I'm shocked. So, if somebody knows somebody, ask them why they haven't made any of her works. I don't know, maybe it's a legal thing, but I really think she deserves an SF Masterworks edition. Well, my friends, that's it for now. We're heading into, at least here in the US, we're heading into Thanksgiving this week. I'm going to go off into the mountains and spend some time with loved ones. I hope for my US friends, I hope you have a lovely Thanksgiving. Um, I know it's been kind of a rough year for a lot of us. I know I have friends who have lost their jobs. I know that probably we've all been trying to stretch our dollars, and I don't want to get super political, but it's been kind of tough. So I really hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. And then for my other friends, for those of you who are out there in the rest of the world, I've seen your comments and hey Edo. um, I really appreciate all your comments, and I hope that everybody the rest of the year, we all have a great rest of the year going into 2026. So thanks a lot, and I will see you very soon.